Welcome back to Rome Boys. Today we have a special guest joining us is Dr. Greg Popcak. Is that
Yep, that's right.
Polish? Bohemian?
Slovak.
All right, cool.
There's a little check mark over the C in Slovak. It makes it sound like a CH.
Okay,
Nice.
yeah. Well, we're from German country, so
Yeah.
neighbors.
Yep.
Dr. Greg Popcak is the founder of CatholicCounselors.com, a group, Catholic pastoral telecounseling practice that conducts over 30,000 sessions per year with Catholic individuals, couples, and families around the world. He and his wife Lisa are the authors of over 20 popular books on marriage, parenting, sexuality, spirituality, and mental health. The Popcaks host More2Life, a call-in advice program airing each weekday on EWTN Radio and across North America on Sirius XM Radio, Channel 130. They are also the founders of Catholic Home, Households on Mission app, which provides online marriage, parenting, and grandparent coaching, as well as creative resources to help Catholics build strong, faithful marriage and family lives.
Welcome, Dr. Popcak.
Hey, good to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, our main work is through CatholicCounselors.com, which is a Catholic pastoral telecounseling practice. I have 20 full-time pastoral counselors that work on the team with me, and we do marriage, family, and individual pastoral counseling with folks all over the world. Really, last year we did 30,000 sessions altogether. So, praise God. But yeah, so I mean, and we started out in 1999 doing telecounseling. So got a little ahead of the curve, but so we've been doing it for now 27 years almost, and then of course we do the radio program that's on EWTN and on Sirius XM channel 130, and that's every day, Monday through Friday, and it's a call-in advice program from 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern. Where we really kind of unpacking practical applications of St. John Paul's theology of the body. We always talk about it on the show how people wonder how can theology really help me in my everyday life, and the theology of the body is really very practical because St. John Paul was really looking at if we took a look at everything that God's given us, salvation history, scripture, creation, what universal principles could we discern about human flourishing and having healthy, holy relationships? And so his answer to that question became what we call the theology of the body, but it's eminently practical and useful. So our whole mission is really unpacking that on the show, through the practice, through our books, and all of that. So
wow, that's great. 30,000 sessions. Mm-hmm. Is that at the standard psychology rate?
So I do have a practical question. So going back before what you would say I would say your professional bio began, how in the world did you go from this is what I want to do with my life and I'm going to go strike out on my own? Because, on the show, my phrase is, or, my tag name, or I guess my stage name, that's weird. Anyways, we don't have this figured out.
Your superhero name.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
your alter ego.
Did you go straight from education into practicing and working for someone else? I mean, what gave you the courage to become an entrepreneur? Because that's what you are.
Yeah. Well, so my dad was a professional photographer who had his own studio.
Okay.
And growing up, so I grew up. I still live in the Rust Belt, but I grew up in. Actually, if you're familiar with the movie The Deer Hunter, I grew up in Clairton, Pennsylvania, which is the first place that The Deer Hunter was filmed, and then I lived like 10 miles down the road from Mango Junction, Ohio, which was the other place that Deer Hunter was filmed. And so it was very much steel town, and so everybody else that we knew in our family worked for the mill, basically, and so I grew up seeing the difference between what it was like to work for somebody else versus what it was like to have your own business. And I just never really learned to work and play well with others. And that's in the sense of in the professional sense. And so I always wanted to kind of have my own practice. So when I got out of grad school, I did, you have to work for other people for the first couple of years at the very least to get your license. And so I did that. But as soon as I could, I started my own practice. But, I always wanted to do ministry. I mean, in fact, I thought I was going to be a priest from second grade on. And so I went into seminary my freshman year of college. and I discerned out that same year. But it was, it wasn't because I didn't want to do ministry. It was kind of because I thought going into seminary that at the time that was the only way, or the best way to do ministry in the church. And I kind of came to realize over the course of the year that there were other ways to be ministry, and that lay ministry is a legitimate expression. And so we, as I was doing my own practice, I continued to pray. Lisa and I continued to pray about how we could turn this more into a ministry, and that's eventually where our first book, For Better Forever, A Catholic Guide to Lifelong Marriage, came out in 1999. And I had done some sessions by telephone because back then desktop publishing was the new thing, right? So everybody was putting out a zine. And so I'd written for some zines and had done some telecounseling for parents based on some articles I'd written there. And when the book came out, I started getting people looking me up again. I mean, I'm dating myself, in the white pages of all things, and calling me and saying, hey, we're really looking for some Catholic help for our marriage, or for this issue or that. Can you point us to somebody? And at the time, there wasn't really a network of Catholic counselors at all. I mean, so I thought, well, this will be my bit for the church. I'll do 2 or 3 sessions a week, and within 6 months, I had to close the face-to-face practice because I was getting so many people reaching out. And since then, we just had steady growth to the point where we now have 20 full-time counselors and growing, 20 books, and the radio program. So God's been very, very generous to us, and we've been very blessed to be able to use the gifts that He's given us to bless others. So. And the pinnacle of it all is me being here with you guys right now.
Oh my! You guys have a sense of humor.
Checks in the mail. Checks in the mail.
Well, that being said, so we're in a mental health crisis, right? Suicide, depression, anxiety, all on the rise. Yeah. So how do we get into it? This might take the rest of the show. Okay. How do we get into this? And then how do we get out of it? From the mental health perspective, and then also our faith. What can our faith do to help us change the tide?
Yeah, so I'm going to get into the question in kind of a weird sort of a way, but I don't know if you're familiar with the author Terry Pratchett at all, but he is a sci-fi kind of comedy writer who has a book called Good Omen, Bad Omen. He has several books, but there's one called Good Omen, Bad Omen. And in it, he's kind of describing the end of the world. And he has the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse as 4 bikers in a gang. And famine rides in, and famine's a big deal. He invents this diet food that you can eat as much of it as you want, but it has no nutritional value, and it starves you to death slowly. And which I thought was clever, but I think that is the case for us and connection. We're more wired and connected than ever in human history, and lonelier than ever. Yeah. We're gorging ourselves on connection that doesn't satisfy us. And I think that's famine, and so I think the mental health crisis is really rooted a lot in that. I'm not blaming screens per se, but I'm really talking about how relationships have changed.
Yeah.
How we don't live in proximity to family anymore. We don't know who our neighbors are. We kind of have the illusion of connection and friendship because of the online world, but we don't really connect in any meaningful way with a lot of people, and we're not meant to be alone. I mean, Scripture says as much, right? And so, when that social part of our being is threatened or frustrated, we start to break down, and in fact. Interestingly, so anxiety disorders, for example, are skyrocketing. The reason for that, though, it doesn't have anything to do with the fact that there are more problems than there used to be, because problems don't really cause anxiety. It's lack of connection, right? So if I'm having problems, but I'm surrounded by people who love me and support me and who are kind of cheering me on and helping me out, I'm not anxious. I mean, I might have concerns, I might be frustrated, but I'm not anxiety ridden. But if everything's going fine, but I'm alone, I could still be anxious, and that's hardwired into us, right? Because if I'm a Neanderthal walking through the woods by myself, I could get at by a saber-toothed tiger anytime. I got to be on high alert, right? If I'm walking with my tribe, then I've got people to have my back. I can calm down, and so we're just hardwired when we feel alone to be anxious. And so the more alone we feel, the more that's true. And sometimes we can feel the most alone when there are people around us because we don't learn to relate and connect. But I think that's the heart of it. I think the very fact that even when we're with people, the online social relationships have dumbed down the idea of connection and friendship to the point that even in-person relationships don't satisfy us.
I find it interesting what you just said about being, Neanderthals walking around getting hit by a saber-toothed tiger. You're always on alert, always on alert. Well, nowadays we're always looking at the screen, and people are walking into traffic, walking into signs, and because we're not aware of what's going on around us. And another thing that hit me was like, we're trading FaceTime with FaceTime, on a screen. And I was thinking, I had that thought this morning. It's like, this is how the robots take over the world. We're surrendering to AI instead of I am.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong. But I think the more we, and it's seductive, right? Because the more you're on the phone, scrolling, doom scrolling, all that, you're getting those dopamine hits constantly. It's like it's like a low grade casino, where I'm gonna pull the lever again. Oh, that's an interesting reel. Oh, pull the lever again. Oh, that's an interesting song, or what, and we just kind of keep that constant hit of dopamine that says, everything's good, I feel good. But we're not connecting, and we're not doing the things that give us meaning. And again, another aspect of mental health is having a life that is really rooted in meaningfulness, intimacy, and virtue. And that's not a theological position to take. There's a lot of research that backs up those things in positive psychology, for example. And meaningfulness refers to my confidence in my ability to use my gifts to make a positive difference in my environment or be a blessing to others in some way. Intimacy, and of course, having connection, like we were just talking about. And virtue, being able to use whatever life throws at me as an opportunity to become a healthier, stronger, holier person in some way. So even the bad stuff, I can take advantage of and get something out of. And the more I can lean into that meaningfulness, intimacy, and virtue, the more I, generally speaking, can say that I'm mentally healthy. But I think that all of those things are being undermined.
Yeah, whenever. So we live in a rural community. Although I've lived in some of the top 5 largest cities in the country, even my kids would make the observation that I've seemed to make when I moved right out of high school to a major city, where I felt I was around all these people, but I had no connection, and I was more empty than I had ever been. My kids, when we go through big cities or travel, they say, "Gosh, there's all these people, but they don't even know each other." Even my children get that. And so I feel like that's kind of an analogy for the social connectivity, but complete emptiness, like you mentioned, famine, consuming so much, but there's no substance to it.
Yeah, when you're talking about famine, I thought you was going to go with, he didn't show up because he ran out of gas.
Famine. And I don't mean to disparage cities in that analogy. That's not my intention.
No,
but it is interesting that when we look at where crime is the highest and where anxiety is quite often measured to be very high, and maybe even participation in mass, is down compared to what compared to the population, as a ratio, because there's more that go to our church that live in our community, in our rural area, and I think it's because they are not always around people, and so it draws them in on Sundays to actually have that connectivity and community. So it's kind of the reverse, because when I'm in the city, I'm just ready to get away and relax and have some peace and quiet, I guess. So I had someone call me recently who was breaking down crying, and she's helping someone.
I was in confidence, man.
She.
Okay, sorry, my bad.
She was helping someone
Bad
that
joke.
was that needs her help, but I always say you got to put your own oxygen on first before you can help the person next to you. And so my suggestion was just have a 3-day uh, uh, silent retreat. Don't, look at your phone voluntarily. Only pick it up if it rings. Don't turn on the TV. And so already there's been a positive response where cutting off.
Yes, she was watching the news.
Yes, it was the news.
Okay.
Absolutely, the world's coming to an end, and
Yeah.
even things of people of Christian backgrounds saying doomsday things. It still will tear you
It
down.
affects your thoughts, and that fasting and separating yourself from that's not reality. Like, get in tune with, like you said, community and other people, and yourself.
We're in the season of Lent as we record this now. Would you make some suggestions, or do you mind sharing some things that you might suggest during a Lenten season to help people manage their anxiety?
Yeah, and I think this, since like we were just talking about, dealing with anxiety depends a lot on the strength of my connections and the health of my relationships. I like to point out that Lent is really about relationship, because all the things, the traditional practices that we do for Lent, the fasting, uh, prayer, almsgiving, it's all meant to help make room in our lives to receive more of God's love and then share that love with others. I think we can sometimes get lost in that, and we think, oh, I'm going to give up chocolate, or I'm going to give up this random thing or that. And I'm not knocking that. That's whatever you want to do is good. But I think what we need to remember, ideally, is behind all of that is the intention that we're clearing out the space in our hearts that's choking out God's love or our ability to share that love with others. And so, being able to use this time in Lent to ask, if I'm going to make sacrifices, one of the areas I can make sacrifices to strengthen my relationships and ideally decrease anxiety is by sacrificing, the fact that I tend to love my comfort zone more than I love the people in my life. My wife will ask me for something, and there's nothing wrong with doing it. It's not like it's immoral or demeaning in some way. I just don't feel like doing it, right? And so I say no, because that's just not me, or I'm not comfortable with that, or hey, you knew who I was when you married me. Why are you asking me that? And we put up those obstacles and blocks to to intimacy and to connection. And I try to remind people that God gave you the spouse He gave you not just because He has a warped sense of humor, but because He's trying to bring something out in you. That by responding generously to the needs that your spouse has, you're responding to God's invitation to grow in ways that you wouldn't grow if He hadn't placed them in your life. And so, in Lent, I think a really meaningful sacrifice would be to ask, what are the things that what are the times that I've been choosing my comfort zone over love? And what could I do to really sacrifice that? In terms of service, what could I do to make more connection and really kind of reach outside of myself to try to, well, so another practice that my wife and I will do, for example, is in the mornings after we have our brief prayer time, we'll just ask each other, what's one thing I could do to try to make your day a little easier or more pleasant?
That's great.
And just that's a sacrifice, right? Because I want to do what I want to do. I want to be concerned with my stuff, right? But now she's told me what she needs, so I guess you have to do something. No, I mean, it's a
Some
privilege, and
accountability.
I love to be able to do it. But being able to have that conversation, and I think that's a meaningful sacrifice to make for the sake of love, and enables us to kind of give more to each other. So I think looking for those little ways to make stronger connection with God and with the people He's placed in our life could be the best way to kind of combat a lot of that anxiety. And I will say another thing, though, of course, a way of connecting with God, um, especially since we're talking about Lent, and the Passover, of course, during Holy Week. During the Passover meal, and I talk about this in my book Unworried: A Life Without Anxiety. There's a prayer called the Dayenu prayer, and basically it translates into "it would have been enough." Right. So the Israelite, or the Jewish people will review kind of their salvation history. It's like, it would have been, you delivered us from Egypt, and that would have been enough, right? But then you led us into the desert by a pillar of cloud, and that would have been enough. But then you led us by a pillar of fire, and it would have been enough. But then you gave us manna in the desert, and if it would have been enough, but then you gave us water in the rock. And the point is this whole gratitude story, right? And we can all do our own personal Dayenu, where we recognize, Lord, okay, you brought me out of this situation where I really thought I was done for, and that would have been enough. But then you did this for me, and then that would have been enough. But then you did that for me, and really taking that time to review that own personal salvation story that God has led us in. And interestingly, um, you know, brain research shows that we can't be grateful and anxious at the same time. That gratitude really destroys anxiety, and so on a neurological level. And so really calling to mind, as trite as it sounds, those gratitude journals, or making those lists of things that we're grateful for, or doing what I was just describing, that kind of day new prayer, really does help combat anxiety by reminding us of where we've been, and how God has been with us. And I think it ties in, and I'm sorry, I'll shut up after this, but
No,
I
no.
think,
I
St.
wish
Paul
I had
talks
my
about
pen and
making a
paper. I'm not
sacrifice
kidding.
of praise. St. Paul talks about making a sacrifice of praise, and it is a sacrifice because often we don't feel like praising God, right? But whenever I can make that list of those things, those little ways that God has blessed me today, even, or over the past week, or much less, over the last 10 years,
Yeah.
he's helping me connect with the gratitude that reminds me that he's present, and I don't have to be afraid, and I don't have to be anxious. And so those are all some small ways that we can fight back against anxiety.
I wanted to
Mm.
ask you about, because how many sessions you've been in with married couples, and the majority of your books on marriage and family. So what do the Catholics that are listening that are married, like what is the secret sauce? What is necessary to have a good, healthy marriage? And yes, read all of his books too.
Yes, dear.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's a funny line, but I would actually disagree with that, because I think, that we need, because we need to be true partners to each other, and like I said, really listening to each other, and learning from each other, because God gave us the spouse that He gave us because He wants us to grow in ways that we wouldn't grow if they weren't in our lives. But kind of coming back around to the secret sauce, you know, it's easy to dismiss it, but I really can't ever stop beating the drum for couple prayer. I like to say that you can have a marriage with Christians in it, but you can't have a Christian marriage unless you're praying together. Because the whole point, right, of Christian marriage isn't just saying, "Okay, God, I'm going to go out and build this marriage and family life, and you just bless it." It's it's I don't know how to love this person you've given to me, at least not the way you want me to. Um, so I went to this church and I made these promises because I want to spend the rest of my life learning how to love you the way God wants me to. And so we can't do that unless we're going to God every day and saying, "Okay, Lord, teach us. What is it to help me to be the husband that my wife needs me to be, the man you want me to be today, not just in general, but today? What does that mean now?" And so that's something, again, that's actually the prayer that my wife and I start the day with every morning when we wake up, is just, what is it, just reflecting a little bit on what would it mean for me to be the husband that she needs me to be, or for the wife that I need her to be, and just praying for the grace to do that. So I think that's really number one. Not just saying prayers, right? But really praying, and asking God to teach us how to have the marriage and family life that He wants us to have, and then using all those spiritual tools, whether that's the Rosary, or the Divine Mercy Chaplet, or other devotions, Liturgy of the Hours, as an opportunity to really listen to what God is saying to that request, but really starting from the heart and asking Him to teach me. So that's number one. I think the other thing I sort of tipped my hat on earlier is, the biggest temptation is that we all love our comfort zones more than we love our spouse, and so looking for little ways to challenge that every day, because that's how we grow spiritually. That's how we grow in intimacy and connection. The You'll find that, when couples first get together, they tend to build the relationship inside their comfort zones, right? And so everything feels great because they're doing for each. They're just happy anybody's doing anything for me, right? But but then as you spend more time with each other, you start realizing that there's a lot that exists about your spouse that's outside your comfort zone. And if you just say, well, I'm not going to go there because that's just not me, then you end up growing apart over time, and the relationship just feels small. And so you either have the choice to accept that, and let the relationship kind of fall apart over time, or you challenge yourself to love your spouse more than your comfort zone, and assuming that they're not asking for something that is immoral or demeaning in some way, then you do it. and where you figure out how to do it over time, and you're patient with each other while you're learning that. But I would say that those are the two biggest things that if I could give anybody something to walk away with, those would be the big tips that I think make Christian marriage especially thrive.
And it seems like seeing the world through the eyes of the other, and not so we're so focused on ourselves. That's all we think about is ourselves, right? But be
Right.
focused on what are they thinking about and what can I do for them? And like you said earlier, like anticipate and then think about their love language and other ways to be able to reach them in those little ways, because those little ways build to something so much bigger, looking long term.
Yeah, and and I talk about this in the Beatitudes, my book, that talks about 8 ways to be an awesome dad, and I go through each of the Beatitudes with the lens of what can this teach us about being a father after the Heavenly Father's own heart, right? And so I think the very first Beatitude is blessed are the dads who are poor in spirit. Yeah. And what that means to me, and what I talk about in the book, is that we all have to kind of recognize that we don't know what we're doing, and that's okay, right? Because where we get into trouble is where we pretend like we do.
Yeah.
I know what my wife needs. I know what my kids need. Listen to me, children. Listen to me, wife. And that's a recipe for disaster, right? But if I can start every day saying, like, I have no idea how to be the husband and father that God wants me to be. I don't know how to be the husband you want me to be, wife, or the dad you need me to be, kids. But I can listen.
Yeah.
And if I listen, then we can pray about that together and we can figure it out. And that's my job, to facilitate that process where we listen to each other and pray together about how God wants us to meet those needs. But I can't do that unless I first acknowledge that I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I apologize to our older kids all the time. I'm sorry, but we learned how to parent on you.
Exactly.
There's not been more of an episode and an interview that we've done where I've, this isn't just to make you feel good. I'm serious. And I think I'll go after this and write down each of these points of the items that you've spoken about. And I'm sure that you've written about them in your book, but it's really challenged me to recognize. And I think what it keeps going back to is the phrase that you keep saying about, I love my comfort zone more than my spouse. There is so much to say about, I guess it's because my comfort zone is so large. There's so many things
Welcome
that
to the
fit
human
in
race, though. That's all of us.
Golly. I definitely got the spouse I needed because in so many ways we're polar opposites. And that's a good thing. She's exactly what I would need in those areas of my life.
Complementarity.
For sure. But
I don't want to steal a show, but like I've definitely
Take on.
The stigma against counseling. Like, can you do your elevator pitch? Like, why everybody can benefit from counseling, and especially Catholic counseling, the integration of our faith and the mind and the heart and the soul, emotions, and everything all there to it. I think there's been some strides in this area of the breakdown of the stigma of counseling. And then a lot of people just have no idea that there is Catholic counselors and Catholic therapists out there.
More than just a fancy couch.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, so again, I think recognizing that I don't know what I'm doing, is not just the key to being a good husband and father. It's the key. It's the key to Christian discipleship, right? So, Pope Francis talked about the Beatitudes as a blueprint for Christian living, and the very first Beatitude is "Blessed are the poor in spirit." So if I'm prideful and kind of full of my own sense of I know what to do to be a great Christian or whatever, I don't need God. I don't need grace. I don't need to learn anything. But if I can acknowledge I have no idea what I'm doing, that opens my heart to receive grace. It opens my heart to receive wisdom, and to then go seek wisdom. And that's where the counseling piece comes in, where by going to counseling, I can learn new skills. I can get the abilities that I need to cooperate more effectively with grace. And the metaphor I like to use on the show is, prayer is absolutely essential, but it's like filling the tank, with gas. If I have a full tank of gas, because I've been sticking up with my spiritual disciplines and my prayer and my sacramental life, I got the tank full, but I got 4 flat tires. I still ain't going anywhere, or I got a cracked block. I ain't going anywhere. And so, that's where counseling and medicine and all that come in, because grace builds on nature, it doesn't make up for it. So I want to make sure that my mind and my body are in the best place to be able to receive that grace and cooperate with it, and counseling plays a really important role in making that happen. So having the humility to recognize that I don't have everything that I need, or I don't know what I'm doing, and then allows me to have the willingness to go and seek that so that I can cooperate with the grace. In terms of the Catholic counseling piece, um, whether they are willing to admit it or not, every counselor is actually teaching you to have a particular worldview about life and relationships.
Hmm.
The technical term for that is anthropology, the kind of who we are, right? So St. John Paul's theology of the body, he wanted it to be what he called an adequate anthropology, a Christian vision of what human fulfillment and happy, holy relationships look like, right? So, when you go to a secular counselor, or we go to any counselor, Christian counselor, whatever, they're teaching you how to be the kind of person that they think you should be, and have the kind of attitudes that they think you should have toward relationships. And so our practice, has really focused on understanding and unpacking St. John Paul's theology of the body. So instead of imposing our idiosyncratic ideas on you about what you should think about life and relationship, we're trying to teach you what the church thinks about life and relationship, and make that practical and help you to be able to live that out. We're not preaching at you, we're not giving you impossible missions to conduct, but we're saying, look, this is where the church says that we need to be. This is where you're at. What can we do to take some small steps toward that? And so, we're helping to build the Christian person through Catholic counseling, according to that vision that's spelled out in St. John Paul's theology of the body. So I think it's important to kind of have that perspective, and be able to work with somebody who's able to bring that to you. And I would say that one of the things that I'm very grateful for is that with my team, I never hire anybody outright. I bring people onto kind of our training program, our formation program. So when I hire somebody, there'll be a period of at least 6 months where we're meeting weekly, reading, talking about their prayer life, talking about the theology of the body, talking about cases in light of all of that. And I'm really working to form them and learn from them too, and how to live this stuff out, so that by the time they're seeing their first client for me, their work, they're really grounded in that Catholic vision of the person and relationship. There are a lot of people who are out there, and I think we're seeing more people now who are doing that kind of integration work. But but it's still a very young field. Like I said, in 1999, I mean, I didn't really know anybody else who was doing this, right? Now there are more, but there's still that question of integration, and you have a lot of people who are Catholics and who are counselors, but have not really done the integration work. So I think it's important to really work with people that can demonstrate that they have that background.
Mm-hmm. It's got to be of some relief too, knowing that you're not influencing their life with your opinion. And even if it's, you're a secular counselor, if you were a secular counselor pointing to some sort of science that you're claiming would potentially fit best for this individual, but that you continue to point back to the solid foundation that is the teaching of the church, that there's got to be a lot of relief to that, because you get to take yourself out of it.
And in particular, your point of view is the data is going towards the great John Paul II in theology of the body, perhaps the greatest doctor of the church ever. We'll see in the future. So pretty grounded. That's pretty solid, if you ask me.
Yeah. Yeah. Hard to argue against.
Well, and the other part of that too is, so one of the, in the sort of in the area of people who popularize the theology of the body, there's sort of a saying that biology is theology. Meaning that the way God designed our bodies to work can teach us a lot about God's plan for flourishing and healthy relationships. And what we find is that there's a lot of neuroscience. There's a whole field called interpersonal neurobiology, which is really studies how relationship affects the brain. And really what we find through that research is that all the philosophical points in the theology of the body are really borne out in the neurology of this interpersonal neurobiology. Because when we talk about, on the one hand, that the donative meaning of the body, that God made us to give ourselves as a gift to others, the social brain works the same way. That we feel healthier and more fulfilled when we're connected to other people, and when we are using our gifts to benefit other people. So a strong, healthy attachment to, is it really there's kind of a really good one-to-one correlation between the science and interpersonal neurobiology and then the theology of the body. They're both talking about the same thing, just different languages.
Yeah. One of the nuggets that you mentioned, I'll just call it that if that's okay, but
yeah, sure,
is that grace doesn't replace nature but builds upon it. You said it so quickly and fluid that it's definitely something that's ingrained in you. Can you elaborate some more on that? Because I really, really appreciate what you're saying there.
Yeah, sure. So God's grace is just super abundant. I mean, we're just awash in the grace. He doesn't hold anything back, right? But my ability to receive that is really dependent on how well formed my mind and my body are. For my ability to cooperate with that grace, to respond to it.
There's some responsibility that you have to take. I don't mean to interrupt, right?
No. Yeah. No, absolutely. You're right. So like, okay. The reason I was pausing is another one of the Beatitudes, actually, blessed are the dads who are meek. We have a tendency to think that meek means weak, but it doesn't. It actually comes from a Greek word that refers to a well-trained war horse. Right. And so if I'm a well-trained war, I know what to focus on, and I'm immediately responsive to my rider's commands. Right. And so if I'm meek, I can do what the Holy Spirit is asking me to do in the moment. I can turn on a dime. I can go where I need to go. I can, wherever he commands me, I'm there. Right. And so to go back to the point, if my brain and my body are developed in that way that allow me to cooperate with grace, then that grace can build on my nature, and I can do amazing things through Christ who strengthens me. Right. But if I'm neglecting that intellectual and that other human formation, I'm putting up blocks. I'm limping. It's not that God can't use me. It's that I'm a blunt instrument in His hands as opposed to a sharpened tool.
Yeah.
I can't. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. The first thing I thought of when you said it too was something that my grandpa used to always say. It was, early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy and makes a man wise. You've got to make sure, and I can imagine that when you're sitting down with someone who's seeking advice and counseling, that, okay, are you getting enough sleep?
Yep.
Are you drinking too much alcohol? Are you eating a proper nutritive diet? And getting enough water, and just knock those things out. I'm no expert.
I would imagine your majority of your clients are not doing that, or some area could be strengthened for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Got to get your house in order, right? In order to receive a guest. Awesome.
Yeah.
I could ask questions all day, and then I'm going to worry about you sending me a bill, and it's going to
be I like the point that you made about, just that we don't have to, we're figuring this out. We don't have it all figured out. It kind of makes me, as a farmer, I'm like a doctor or a lawyer, we practice. We don't have this figured out. And then isn't that what we say? We don't say we're perfect Catholic Christians. We are practicing Catholic Christians. So, we don't have this all figured out. We're learning as we go. Yeah. It wouldn't hurt to listen to people who have a education in some of this stuff. And then they charge you for it.
Yeah.
But if you start with that as your foundation, I can see how you can thrive. So it's a good philosophy to start with, a good mission.
Yeah, no doubt.
They say a lot of these things, you watch a lot of these podcasts where they go on for hours and hours and hours, and it just seems like it kind of drags along a lot of times and a lot of useless information. I think we packed a lot of quantity or inequality. There's more quality than quantity in this one. I could watch this over and over again because I'm like, okay, I didn't write that one down. I need to
no kidding.
Let's go back, rewind.
So once we have it all mastered, we'll have you back on the show.
Maybe we can do a long one some other time.
I'd love to do it again. That'd be great.
This was a lot of
great
fun.
Conversation.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I could, like I said, I could keep asking and keep asking. I won't. That really is me prefacing to say, like, I got about 30 minutes more.
I know.
but
I'm asking for a friend.
Well, and if I could just offer this to folks who are watching, if you're interested in learning more, or if anything about what I said appeals to you in any way, but you're struggling to apply it in your own life, or you've got questions about things that maybe we touched on but didn't develop a lot more, I'd really invite you to just visit us at CatholicCounselors.com, and we have a lot of articles there, a lot of videos there, lots of things for you to check out, even if you're not interested in counseling. But there's a ton of resources, and of course the Catholic counseling practice, if you want that kind of faithful accompaniment to help you overcome whatever personal or marriage or family struggles you're facing too.
And catch you on the radio every day.
Yeah.
Please, every 10 a.m. Eastern, More2Life on EWTN Catholic Radio and on Sirius XM channel 130.
Mm-hmm.
And is there a way that someone, if they don't have Sirius XM, or
podcast every day? They can
Okay.
download the podcast every day through wherever you get your podcasts. It's
Perfect.
More2Life. Yeah.
Excellent. More to life.
Well, Dr. Greg Popcak, we really appreciate you taking the time out to spend with us. We had a lot of fun. We have a lot more questions, so we will be in contact.
Yeah,
That's great. No, love to do it again. Thanks for having me on.
Free on an email, right?
I've been waiting for this conversation for quite some time, because as a convert, I've been listening to your information, to your shows, and my wife listens, and it's definitely, I feel selfish here, but I am going to go back and I'm going to rewatch it, and I'm going to put some of this in, so maybe I can share it in the show notes.
Absolutely. Okay. Put it
All right.
Thanks, guys.
practice, and I promise no more pricing jokes.
and we won't pirate your information. We'll point them to your content as well.
All good. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Greg.
So in the
My pleasure.
meantime,
Be bold.
be real.
Be Catholic. God
God
bless.
bless.